this is the final installment of the 3-part series. In other words, this is part 3 of 3. If you haven't seen the last 2 videos, we do try to put some context in this video so you're not completely lost, but I still recommend you go watch those 2 videos first, then come back. If you have watched those videos, then stay tuned. Welcome back! And yeah, I'm still wearing my holiday pajamas, and I've got most of my holiday decorations still up. My Christmas tree is still up. Whatever, I don't care. In my defense, it is right now January 7th. You're just watching this video whenever I post it, maybe mid to late January. I don't know why I said that in my defense, because if you're a friend of mine, then you know I'm full of crap, and that my Christmas tree will probably still be up late April. Yeah! But anyways, we like to talk about people that made a difference in our lives during Christmas time. This year, my daughter chose Alan Turing. We already made a video about him. Today we're going to be talking about Ida B. Wells, and you can adapt this in your Christmas tradition if you'd like. It doesn't have to interfere with reindeers or Frosty the Snowman or elves. That's cool too. It doesn't have to interfere with your traditions. We just like to talk about people that, you know, were real. Oh, we're on the subject of real. Yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian. I run a children's charity. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm very, very complex. There's a lot of variation to me, to my brand. And this video is a testament of that. We're going to be having fun, but we're going to be talking about very difficult to talk about conversations, topics of contention, and full transparency. During this talk, we're going to learn about violence, both physical and sexual. And it's going to be difficult at times, but it's necessary. So buckle up and let's learn about the amazing person who Ida B. Wells was.
A beautiful baby was born into slavery on July 16, 1862 in Holly Springs, Mississippi. A few months after her birth, her and her family would be freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. This by no means ends up being a happy ending for her, as at the age of 16, she loses a sibling and both of her parents to yellow fever. In a desperate attempt to keep her family from being separated, she decides to become the primary caretaker of her 5 siblings. She does this again at the age of 16 while becoming a full-time school teacher and attending college. I love the movie Legally Blonde, but now imagine if Elle was only 16 years old. She has to work, so replace her partying with having to be a full-time teacher and put 5 mouths to feed in the place of her chihuahua. Get it now? So this young 16-year-old cares for her siblings on her own until she moves in with her aunt in Memphis, Tennessee. It is here where she starts not only becoming one of the first black females entrepreneurs, but an investigative journalist, a civic leader, and an advocate for civil rights. Who is this powerful young lady? Her name is Ida B. Wells.
Civil rights activists are not stars or celebrities, but they should be. We give millions of followers and likes to individuals that they made a song or a movie will never watch again. But Ida B. Wells, in addition to all the things I've just said, she also played a role in founding the NAACP. She worked with people like Francis E.W. Harper, Mary Church Terrell, W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman. She's basically the Samuel L. Jackson of the Avengers, but for civil rights. And most people don't even know who she is.
Due to the dangerous nature of speaking up in the South for black rights, Ida B. Wells initially wrote under the moniker Iola. In Memphis, Tennessee, where she found better pay as a teacher, she reported and covered incidents of racial segregation and inequality. Eventually, she became a co-owner of the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight newspaper, making her one of the first black female owners of a newspaper in the United States. So Ida, as co-owner, writer, and editor, would often draw upon stories from her own life. For example, she used to commonly have to take this newfound technology of transportation known as the train. In one example, Ida purchased a first-class ticket to ride from Memphis to Woodstock, Tennessee. Some members of the train crew order her to move back to the train cart reserved for African Americans. But Ida does not move voluntarily. The conductor, some employees, and even some passengers force her into the other cart and eventually kick her off of the train. Ida does not take this sitting down. She wins a $500 court settlement in a local court case. Unfortunately, in 1887, that decision is overturned by the Supreme Court. In another example, Ida was teaching in a segregated school, and she noticed that the funding for the African American half of the school was far less than the funding allotted for the white school. When she wrote about this, she wrote it under her own name, and unfortunately, in 1891, the school decided to not renew her contract. Ida had been writing in Memphis since 1882. You would think in 1891, when she got fired from the school system and she lost that additional income, that she would be disheartened and quit. But instead, she found more fervor to fight about an even greater grievance in the black community, and that is lynchings. A lynching, or killing by the way of mob without trial, became a common form of retribution in the South as a means of administering vigilante justice absent of due process. These acts of violence took many forms, but perhaps most infamously, hanging a person from a tree. Lynchings could and often did take place without the victims being charged of any sort of crime. No need to present any evidence, witnesses, etc. And even if the victim had been charged with a crime, a murder from a vigilante mob in the middle of the night is not justice. In March of 1892, 3 black grocery store owners in Memphis, Tennessee were murdered by an angry mob. Lynchings like these, as mentioned before, were happening all over the United States, especially in the South. But what made this one in particular any different? These were friends of a young investigative reporter that decided she was going to shine the light of truth to what happened. After the murder of her friends, who she knew were not criminals, Ida decided to investigate the validity of all lynchings taking place. Because these murders were taking place with impunity, Ida only had to just research police records and newspaper reports and find the surviving family members of these victims and eyewitnesses to get what really took place. Wells did this knowing that she would be putting her own life at risk, but her hard work and determination paid off. The narrative was that many of these murders were taking place because black people were breaking the law, but what Ida had discovered was that usually wasn't the case. As it would turn out, Ida's friends, the owners of the People's Grocery, were only guilty of having a moderately successful grocery store that competed with other white businesses. Ida printed the truth in her newspaper, and eventually this angered another mob that destroyed her newspaper press and threatened her to never come back to Memphis. After the death threats, Ida decided to stay in New York, where she later republished her findings in a pamphlet called Southern Horrors: Lynch Law in all of its phases. In 1895, after settling in Chicago, she built on Southern Horrors in a longer piece called The Red Record. Her careful documentation of the horrors of lynching, along with her public speeches, drew international attention. Wells used her newfound fame not for personal glory, but to amplify her message. She traveled to Europe, where she created European outrage for the violence taking place in the United States. She did this in hopes that the United States government and public would find the error of their ways. She didn't stop there. In addition to help start the NAACP, she worked with the National Association of Colored Women's Club, the Alpha Suffrage Club, and the National Afro-American Council, along with confronting other powerful organizations for racial practices. She even led a delegation to the White House to protest workplace discrimination practices and much, much more.
Ida B. Wells, this beautiful woman, died March 25th, 1931 at the age of 68. But her memory should never die. Certainly her legacy will never die. Like, she was a trailblazer of both social and political activism. She laid the foundations for us to build upon to fight inequalities in both race and misogyny. But let's not kid ourselves. There's so much further to go. We need to remember the words of Ida B. Wells that said, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. The way to combat darkness is with light. The way to combat hate is with love." And that is something that we should never give up on. Thank you so much for watching.
Comment, like, and